Hi folks, so I have deliberately stayed off of making too many observations. The new moon in Leo tomorrow, for which there'll be a separate video. Regular subscribers to my channel and viewers of my videos know that I do my new moon videos after a new moon and not before. So there will be a new moon in Leo video tomorrow. The new moon in Leo, of course, falls on August the 8th. And August the 10th is 2 months after the Gemini solar eclipse on June the 10th. And I find that the week before and week after, 2 months following a solar eclipse, are really important, and they harken back to the eclipse. Why this is, I don't know, and it's not something I've ever read anywhere or learned by reading or by anybody else. It is by observation. I suppose some people could say that every new moon is in conversation with a solar eclipse and every full moon is in conversation with a lunar eclipse, but I don't know why the intensity is so much stronger the week before and week after the 2-month. I don't know if there's, it's not really an anniversary because it's not falling, 2 months after the solar eclipse. So this past week, as we wrap up this week and we head into the new moon, and the week after the new moon, the new moon is just about 2 days off, may well be extremely important. It may feel really important. And if you know where Gemini sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, you may find that even though you are between 2 full moons in Aquarius and heading into 1 new moon in Leo tomorrow, that wherever Gemini sits in your chart is somehow very resonant at this time in a meaningful way, in an eclipsy way. It wouldn't surprise me if the energies of this past week and this next week prove somehow decisive and prove to be turning points and prove to be inflection points. When I was thinking about doing this video, because I've been thinking about it for a while, the reason why I separated myself from sort of general predictive astrology for a while is I wanted to see whether this hypothesis holds true or not. Rather than come and say, be really careful about this new moon, these 2 weeks here and these 2 weeks there, which I've done previously on this channel before. And I've talked about this date earlier this year too. I was like, let me just see, is this really going to be, is this really true? Yes, it's a Leo new moon, and yes, both the Aquarius full moons are extremely important, and as I've said, August is the most important month of this year. But the Gemini solar eclipse is very present right now, on June the 10th, the week before after June 10th, and right now. And somehow, all these signs are in conversation with each other. Now, the Gemini solar eclipse was very much in conversation with Neptune and Pisces. All you have to do is just go back a few videos and you'll find all this content. Go back to the Mercury in Gemini video. We had Mercury retrograde in Gemini in May, June. So just, start there, and if you really want the narrative, you'll get the full narrative since that time. Gemini, Pisces, Leo, Aquarius. We can't rule out Virgo, where we have Mars and Venus right now, because the planets and Venus will oppose Neptune and Pisces, so they add to the conversation. We can't rule out Uranus and Taurus right now, because on its way to becoming a new moon, the Sun and the Moon are going to be squaring Uranus and Taurus, and Saturn and Uranus, of course, are squaring each other this year. So Leo, Virgo, Aquarius, Pisces, even Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn. Gosh. Uranus in Taurus. All of these are weaving some sort of an interrelated tale. These are not separate transits. They're in conversation with each other. What we're dealing with in this particular video, of course, is that we have just gone through a series of very important Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces follow each other. And the outer planets apart from Uranus and Taurus, which is in conversation with Saturn in Aquarius. The outer planets, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and Neptune, are in consecutive signs. And at this time of the year, as the planets are moving through from Gemini to Cancer, and then Leo, and then Virgo, they are opposing, and by the planets I mean the personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. They're opposing these outer planets. The outer planets will win. These oppositions happen every year or so, in the case of Mars. So it's not as if these oppositions are life-changing, but they're illuminating transits and changes and interrelated growth that we're all going through, and eclipsiness, in a way that's creating a certain amount of pressure. And that pressure can only be described as letting go of the old and moving towards the new. Letting go of the old because with the solar eclipse conjunct a retrograde Mercury in Gemini, squaring Neptune, where Gemini sits in your chart and where Pisces sits in your chart, and the Gemini signifying for a lot of people the who, and the Pisces signifying the what, a need to end old cycles of deception, gaslighting, murky behavior, delusion, deluding ourselves, others deluding us deluding others, a lot of poker playing. There's a need to put this kind of energy behind us. Now, we may not be at a point where we feel like we're putting it behind us, but this Leo new moon tomorrow is going to give us a certain amount of energy and warmth and kind of leonine, fiery energy to help move us forward. But I would not be surprised at all if this past week and this upcoming week somehow harken back to these themes of what am I dealing with? Is someone deceiving me? Am I overthinking this? Am I dealing with a bee or a grizzly in the room? What's the level of the danger here? And what's the solution? The reason why I'm harking back to this now is we've had planets oppose Pluto. I've done a separate video on this. We've had planets oppose Saturn. Done a separate video on this. We've had planets oppose Jupiter. I referred to this, and now we're moving into planets opposing Neptune. Indeed, the Neptune oppositions look something like this. Venus opposes Neptune on August the 9th. Mercury opposes Neptune on August the 24th. Mars opposes Neptune on September 2nd. The Sun opposes Neptune September 14th. All you have to do is Google these oppositions and you'll get the dates. I wouldn't get too hung up on the dates. Outside of that, on August the 10th, Mercury opposes Jupiter. So 2 days after this new moon, you have Venus opposing Neptune and Mercury opposing Jupiter. August the 19th, the Sun opposes Jupiter. All the Saturn oppositions are now behind us. But at the beginning of this week that we find ourselves in now, I was going to call this video something like battle lines being drawn, because of the oppositions to Saturn, and specifically the opposition of Mercury and the Sun opposing Saturn, August the 1st and August the 2nd. Saturn being a planet that is asking us not to fall into the path of least resistance when it comes to our boundaries in the part of the chart where Aquarius sits and what that stands for, because by acting in that part of the chart in a Saturnian way and taking advantage of the end of a 12 to 13 year cycle and a start to 12 to 13 year cycle that Jupiter wants to complete between now and December, we will somehow free ourselves and liberate ourselves where Uranus sits in Taurus. Uranus is waiting on us to make the right decisions and pass the right tests where Aquarius sits in our chart. On an overall perspective, on a global perspective, issues related to social equality and independent thinking, critical thinking, not getting lost in fantasy or faith, whether you are left-wing or whether you are right-wing. Not believing everything you see or hear without your own sense of fact-based fact-finding. Sorry, I can't do better than that. Very Aquarian, very objective. You only have to pay attention to what is going on with the vaccinations and how people feel about them one way or the other to get a sense of what this argument actually feels like and how both sides are feeling like, do I have all the facts? Are we presenting all the facts? The other party is so stupid. And ultimately, how do we discern what is actually going on? But with Saturn and Jupiter, but especially Saturn in Aquarius, issues related to social equality. Remember, Saturn's entry into Aquarius brought to the surface the Black Lives Matter movement and the George Floyd passing, and everything that happened in the first half of 2020. And somehow dealing with those issues and not falling into the path of least resistance there, and taking a scientific approach, very Aquarian, independent, objective approach to what feels fair and right. And everyone these days, no matter which side of the aisle you sit on, feels like they need to take this approach on whatever issue that they're dealing with. Because the accusation is that the other party either doesn't have the facts, or is distorting the facts, or is deluded, or is drinking the Kool-Aid. And Aquarius is very much about tossing out the Kool-Aid. The problem, of course, that we all face is that there's just so much Kool-Aid to drink everywhere, right? At the end of the day, how much time do we really have to go in and independently verify everything? On some level, we've got to take the information we're getting from certain sources, and we've got to make our choices with regard to who we believe and who we don't. But even there, a certain amount of critical thinking can be applied. And Uranus in Taurus, the liberation of the planet, the liberation of our food supplies, the liberation of our sense of abundance, the liberation of our sense of self-worth, the liberation of our sense of independence, the liberation of our sense of well-being and plenty, and the liberation and the sense of authentic access to our resources is dependent on these issues related to social equality and independent, objective thinking. There you have it. That's the best I can do for you, but as far as the Saturn-Uranus issues are concerned, and the oppositions to Saturn are concerned, the rest depends on your individual chart. Where's Aquarius in your chart? We just had a full moon. We're going to have another full moon in Aquarius on the 24th. We have Jupiter here, finishing up the end of a 12-year cycle, starting a 12-year cycle, and we have Saturn here till March 2023, determined to teach us a more embodied, emboldened, self-preserving, self-helping way of dealing with issues related to this part of the chart that prevents us from falling into, you've heard me say this lots of times, the path of least resistance, and where we've placed our boundaries and patterns of behavior over the past 28 years that do not serve us and that do not help us fulfill our potential. So the oppositions at the beginning of this week, with the Sun and Mercury opposing Saturn, presented that information to you. As the week has gone on, we are shifting to both feeling the Gemini eclipse and where Gemini sits in your chart. And again, who sits in that part of the chart? What in Pisces they may have an eye on. We've talked about the fact that over the summer, Jupiter came in perhaps to give you a gift or to bake a cake, and that some part of that might be under some sort of threat by someone who's sitting in the part of your chart in the house where Gemini occupies. These are past issues. These are past issues that we want to deal with, and the overwhelming theme of the second half of this year is we're moving into new territory. We are moving past Saturn in Capricorn and Jupiter in Capricorn, and Pluto is getting ready to leave Capricorn slowly. But it is in these last 5 degrees of Capricorn, which means we're going to start to feel the rumblings of it and the energy of it in Aquarius again. And so we need to, with the solar eclipse conjunct Mercury retrograde, be done with these energies that we have been carrying for a while that may be related to crises that we experienced in 2015, 2016, and cleanse ourselves and purge ourselves of these energies. And that new information about it and the pressure to make that happen and eclipsiness around it is going to be very present. And over the next 4 weeks, encoded by this new moon, we're going to be dealing with the first of the Neptune oppositions. Venus, our relationships, our money, our self-worth, opposes Neptune, the planet of loss and deceit in Pisces, crisis 2015-2016, what the Gemini side of the house is eyeing. Poker playing, but also a feeling of and a visibility towards what feels threatened. Venus is in Virgo, our labor. After Venus on August the 24th, Mercury will oppose Neptune, and this drama continues. Then Mars opposes Neptune, and the Sun opposes Neptune September 14th. So this is carrying on over but it's here and it's present. And a day later, Mercury opposes Jupiter. Our communication, our processing is in some sort of tug of war with this end of a 12-year cycle, start of a 12-year cycle that has been created where Aquarius is. Mercury is in Leo. And this new moon is conjunct Mercury. So the opposition to Jupiter is important. What these oppositions signify are an inflection point. We cannot ignore the transitions that are at work. We cannot ignore the tests that are before us. We cannot ignore the promise of the future. And we cannot ignore the forces that jeopardize that promise. And there could be a lot of thoughts of escape, escaping the things that bind us, escaping past energies. There could be a lot of thought about decisively investing in who or what we want to invest in the future and who or what we want to leave behind. And even if you're not at a place to make that investment, somewhere inside a switch could get flipped where you just feel like, I am done with this. This is a part of my past. There is nothing for me here. This will drag me down. I have the promise of the future that I need to move towards. There are nice, wonderful things that are cooking. I need to pay attention to my path of least resistance and those things that I have done, which I no longer need to do, should do, to welcome in these kind of new beginnings and also pay attention to the information, the eclipse information you're getting, going back to where Gemini sits in your chart, and determine what it is that you're going to do about it. This Leo new moon is going to give you energy to act. The inflection point is much bigger. August is the most important month of this year, and for many people, they might look back to these 2 weeks, if you'll remember it, and say, aha, that is when I decided how I am going to move forward and what I'm going to leave behind and what I'm going to shed. The shedding right now can come with thoughts of escape and departure and moving towards something. Departure is only partly the right word. Leaving, in a certain sense, to go somewhere, to move forward. The next chapter. Chapter is too small a word. And these oppositions are creating this tug of war where our sense of self-worth, our processing, our energy, our vitality, our ability to go after our goals and preserve what is important to us, and our subconscious awareness are going to be looking at each of these planets, Saturn and the pressures it's imposing, Pluto and who and what is trying to control us, Jupiter and the gifts that it is giving, Neptune and what feels like it is just, somehow not for us, but where still boundaries need to be placed, and how do we feel about it, and what's going on, and what's so murky. And as a result of these oppositions, we are going to be feeling like, this is what I am comfortable with, this is what I will tolerate, this is what I will surrender. Inflection point, with battle lines being drawn about a week ago. So if you're feeling like you're moving forward from battle lines to acceptance, intuitive recognition, decision-making, decisiveness, followed by action that probably starts to get put into place after the new moon tomorrow. I'm going to leave it at this. It's a more important video than we might realize, I guess. And then I will do my new moon in Leo video tomorrow. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it, like the video, comment on it. Likes and comments, I think, give it more circulation on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button to be notified whenever I do new videos. And my contact information is in the description area below. You can contact me there for rates for personal readings, or I can also make you an easy-to-read version of your chart that tells you which signs are in which houses and what planets and what it all means to some extent. So rates for that as well. Okay, I will leave it at that. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for being patient. No one hounded me about where the videos are. As I said, I just wanted to really see whether what I think about this 2 months after solar eclipse is true or not. And it is. Important weeks, decisive weeks, turning points. Okay? Till tomorrow.